When you hear the term ethical, what does it mean to you? Because when I ask different people give me different definitions. I think everyone's idea of an ethical company may mean something different, like maybe how they treat animals or the materials they use and how it impacts the planet. Or maybe it's about how they treat the people that work for them. I think the definition of ethical is ever changing and ever evolving, and I think that's a good thing. Welcome to Business with Purpose. I'm your host, Molly Stillman of Still Being Molly, and this show is all about bringing you the stories behind the brands, companies, and small businesses that are changing the world. Each week, I interview an entrepreneur, a CEO, a nonprofit director, a community leader, or just an amazing person who is trying to make a positive impact, not only through their personal life, but also with their professional career. My goal is to show you that no matter what you do for a living, you can make an impact right where you are. My guest this week is Sydney Sherman, the founder of FAIRE, an online marketplace that connects conscious consumers with ethical brands and artisans. I loved hearing Sydney's story, and I cannot wait for you to dive in with us. So without further ado, on to my conversation with Sydney. Hey, Sydney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Molly. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I am so excited. Now, you just moved to New York City from Austin, Texas, which my husband who helps edit my shows laughs because he's like, is every single person you interview from Austin? Which that is an exaggeration, but at the same time, I feel like there are so many ethical and purpose-filled business owners who live in Austin. I mean, I would say it's probably a good portion of my guests are in Austin. So, I mean, I know you were from Austin, so you just moved to New York City, but still, do you find that to be true, that there's just a lot of entrepreneurs in the Austin area?
A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of new entrepreneurs there, and also ethical. It's just kind of like a mindset there, like having an ethical business. It's not even, and that's what I hope to see in the future, is like everywhere, just buying ethically, treating your employees well, just being, a good person all around is just like a normal thing in business. And I feel like that's just how it is there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we really dive in to everything about you and FAIRE, before we dive into about FAIRE, I want to learn about you. So I'm going to have you do what all my guests do, and that's give us the Sydney 101. So tell us your story.
Awesome. So let's see. I was born in Houston to entrepreneurs. Both of my parents have always been entrepreneurs my entire life. They started businesses when they were really young. I've always wanted to start a business. So grew up in Houston. I then went to college in Austin, and obviously I stayed. That's where I met my husband, started my first business. Both my brothers lived there as well. So my whole family moved to Austin, essentially. And both of my brothers have started businesses there. The youngest one is now 21. So we're a very entrepreneurial family, which is really great because it's really hard to start businesses. I mean, as you know, starting anything is difficult.
Yeah.
And so having that support group has just been awesome. And it's just a different mindset, really, like being able to start something. So having like your core group behind you has been really helpful.
Yeah.
I graduated from college, and this is where like my story like really begins, as far as like, and you're in school your entire life if you opt to go to college up until like 21, 22. So your life is in some ways controlled by outside circumstances, although obviously we all have choices. But when I graduated college, that's when I'd always been interested in traveling, and I'd always felt like my heartstrings pulled by immigrants or people from other countries, especially like really impoverished groups of people. And I don't know why. It's just something that I've always felt. So I've traveled to like 40 countries now. So at that point,
wow.
I think I did. Yeah, I've traveled a lot. I live for it. I did an around the world trip. I don't remember how many countries I hit on that trip, but I was constantly on the move, and I really liked exploring the cultures and like talking to the people. I didn't want to make any friends from my country. Nothing. I mean, obviously I love my country, but it was all about like exploring these other countries. And so that's when I really started to like come into myself almost. And it formed really like very fundamentally who I am today. And there was one point on that trip, it was in India, and I went through Europe and then northern, eastern, southern, then a bit of the Middle East, and then India. And I was supposed to continue on. But there was something about the level of poverty in India that was just, I mean, it was just very disturbing. Like it was almost like nothing I'd ever seen before. I'd seen other poverty, but like it was so pervasive there.
Yeah.
And so that's really the point where I was like, okay, I want to dedicate my life to this. Like I want to find a way to eradicate extreme poverty, especially because I was just seeing like not only were there tons and tons of people in like really destitute situations, but also tons of crafts. Like, I mean, these people needed work. They didn't need like handouts and things like that. So that's when I started thinking like, there's got to be a more sustainable way to figure out how to solve or eradicate extreme poverty. And I really started to think about like business and extreme poverty and like the connection between the two, because that's sustainable. That gives people like, it kind of puts like their own destiny back in their hands, so to speak, if we can give people opportunity. So that I did that trip, came back. I knew I wanted to start a business like FAIRE. How to do that, I was not sure. I mean, I was still very young. So I worked for 6 months. I pretty much always knew that I wasn't going to be the greatest employee. So I quit that and I started a company for administrative assistants. Let's see, I think I was 22, 23. And I had that for several years. I went back and got my MBA in Austin from a school called Acton. It's for entrepreneurship specifically. And then from there, I launched FAIRE, and that brings us to today.
Awesome. So if people are not familiar with FAIRE, what is sort of your elevator pitch for FAIRE? You know, exactly what was the purpose? What does it do? And what was the purpose behind when you started it?
So FAIRE is an online marketplace that connects conscious consumers with ethical brands and artisans. So basically, going back to India when I was seeing all these, and I'd been seeing it in other countries along the way too, but poverty and markets. And I was thinking there's a plethora of things in these markets. Every time I bring them home, my friends go crazy over them. They love the stuff that I'm bringing home. They want the stuff. There just doesn't seem to be, and you know, you can definitely find plenty of ethical companies. And the coolest thing is that more and more are popping up like every day, it feels like. Mm-hmm. But it's difficult to find them. And so I wanted to create a way that could connect people on a large scale with these ethical companies that are really like on the ground helping people in impoverished areas, or even here just operating with ethical principles. I know I throw the term ethical around a lot, and just to like give a rundown of what that means to me, because it means something different to everybody probably. Safe working conditions, fair wages, and that the fair wages part is really tricky. And then environmentally sustainable. So, yep, it took me a while to think of the idea for FAIRE. It seems really simple in hindsight, but when I was thinking, I thought of a ton of different ideas and finally settled on the marketplace model because I felt like that could have the biggest impact.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back a little bit before we dive in, because you said something, what does the term ethical mean? And I want to talk about that. But this is a question that just popped up for me when you were just talking about your experiences. And it's maybe a selfish question because I also love to travel. Yeah. So the fact that you have traveled to 40 countries, that's like hashtag goals, as the millennials say. What is your favorite? Okay, I've got a couple questions. My first question is, what is your favorite unique country you visited? Or what's your favorite country you visited? But like, if you've traveled to 40 countries at this point, you've been to some unique countries that aren't necessarily on people's radars.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I guess my favorites aren't necessarily like super crazy or unique. I really loved Istanbul. Like it was just, for me, the East meets the West, and like I just loved it. Like I would live there for a few years if I could. So that's probably my favorite. I also love South Africa, so it's not super unique, but South Africa is one of those places I feel like I could send anybody to. Like people from like my parents' range all the way down to like, you know, me when I was just backpacking around with no money and like 3 outfits. So yeah, that's amazing. I've always wanted to go there, and I have a couple friends who have been there. One actually traveled abroad. I don't know if it was in Istanbul or
or studied abroad, I mean, or around it, and traveled there and spent some time there and just said it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. I also, two other favorites. Mexico City is one of my favorites.
Oh.
I know it's so close to where I grew up. So it's really easy for me to visit Mexico City. Tons of flights between any Texas city and Mexico City, really. Yeah. And then I also really liked Lebanon. It was very beautiful.
Now, I love Lebanese food. So
yeah,
I feel as though I would enjoy Lebanon considering their food is amazing.
Oh, you would for sure. I mean, the food's so good. And just like it's tiny, but it's like mountains backing into the ocean. So you get everything. It's very pretty.
Yeah. What is something that over the years, as you've spent all this time traveling and you have visited these beautiful countries and seen so many different types of culture, what is the thing that you tend to learn from each? Do you learn something new? I mean, I know you learn something new each trip, but like, what is something you go into the trip hoping you get out of it?
I go into each trip like wanting to feel connected to like a new group of people and a new culture. Like I really just love experiencing different cultures, but also I just know like it really opens my mind more than anything. Like it completely shifted who I was. The first trip I did with a group of people from other countries, which is why I ended up doing like the Around the World trip, was a study abroad program. And we were just with people from all over the world. And that just, I mean, it literally fundamentally shifted like how I thought about myself and the world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just open-mindedness, and my mind opens a little bit more every time I go somewhere new.
That is awesome. Yeah, I tend to, I haven't been to a ton of places. I've been some places, and I'm also I'm one of those people, like once I find a place I really love, I tend to just want to go back there. Yeah. So, I've been to Kenya 3 times, and I am just like counting down the days until I can go again. And, I've just developed these relationships there. But every time I go for an extended period of time, longer than, 8, 9, 10 days. And so when I go, I really try to invest in the relationships that I've built there and just try to learn something each time so that I can become more educated, or I can learn more about their culture, or I can learn more about the issues that they are facing and the differences of their daily lives from my daily life and things like that. I feel like the more that we can connect with other cultures, but in a way that helps both sides kind of become educated to our differences so that we can learn from and respect them, I think that's really what can be beneficial and beautiful, like what makes the world just awesome. Because when you learn to just really appreciate the differences in different cultures, it just, I don't know. I just get really excited about it. I realize that's like not the most articulate way to describe it. But
I felt like you said it perfectly.
Anyway, okay. So I could talk about travel all day. So,
I know, right?
So when you got the idea for FAIRE, and you said you were like, I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't know what I was doing, and it's so funny because I've now interviewed, over 110 entrepreneurs, and every single one of them says that, whether they went to business school or not. And so that's a really common theme among business owners is they're like, I get this idea and I'm like, well, I don't know how to do this. Where did you start? Like, what was your first step when, and the reason I ask this question, and I'm asking it kind of in a specific way, because so often I talk to people or I hear from people and they say, oh, well, I have this idea. I think it would be really great. Somebody should do it. And I'm like, well, why isn't that person you? Why don't you do it? And a lot of times I think it's because people get overwhelmed because they see the bigger picture instead of the smaller steps to get there. And so I like to kind of break it down sometimes and find out, okay, so you had this idea. What was your first step? Like that first step, did you make a phone call? Did you come up with the name? What was that first step before you did anything else?
So the first step for me was just writing everything down. I had been thinking about it for years up until that point. And I just knew like starting an international business with all these like different cultures, languages, logistical processes that I would have to figure out would just be like really difficult. And so I wrote it all down. And the second step, which to me was the most important, was sharing it with people, because there are so many people that have so many different ways of thinking. And like each person I talked to contributed like a little bit more about a little bit more on how to tackle some of the issues I knew I was facing, and just like a little bit more confidence. Like, you can do this. And I feel like entrepreneurs need a lot of that, especially at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Is because I think the confidence part, or the maybe the lack of, tends to be the first major hurdle for people, is that they don't know, or they don't think they can do it.
Yeah, I think that the hardest thing as an entrepreneur is not the like actual issues. And this is just me, but I think it's like mindset for sure, because every single day you have to, especially at the beginning, you have to convince yourself that what you're working on is going to work when there's no proof of that.
Yeah.
And that it's going to be valuable to people, you know, beyond just like, you can have something that like works somehow, but like might not be like immensely valuable. So I don't know. It's totally a mindset thing, like keeping your head in the game and just like continuing to work on what you're working on despite all the odds.
Yes. Have you seen, I feel like there was a graphic that went around, like one of those kind of hand-drawn graphics that kind of got shared around a bunch, that was like the life of an entrepreneur. And it was like kind of like one of these, it almost looked like a heartbeat, where it's just like, it starts off of like, I have this idea, and then all of a sudden it spikes up and it's like, this is the greatest idea ever. And then down, it spikes back down and goes, oh my gosh, I'm quitting tomorrow. And then it goes back up and says, I am the best business owner in the world. And like 10 minutes later, it's like, I give up. I'm never doing this again. You know what I mean? Like how just in a span of 15 minutes, an entrepreneur can be like, I give up. I'm awesome. I'm never doing this again. This is the greatest thing ever. You know, it really is a roller coaster.
Yes, definitely a roller coaster. And sometimes I look at my friends and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so envious. Like they're done at 5, like they're all hanging out with each other. And like, here I am completely stressed out. Haven't showered in like a number of days. I haven't worn makeup in God only knows how long. I'm like, wait a second, what is happening to me?
Yes. So after you kind of those initial steps, you wrote everything down, you really kind of sat down and you know, I know you began to, you know, talk with other people about it, which I think that's an important step to note, is that, yes, we are entrepreneurs, or you sometimes see that that hashtag solopreneur. But at the end of the day, like we all have those people around us that are either the sounding board or the support system or the person that just kind of is our cheerleader. Who is that person for you that has really been supportive through all of this?
I would have to say, like, collectively, my family. I talk to them probably every single day. And like my brother, we grew up in the same school grades. We're essentially like twins. We started our businesses at the same time. And my little brother and I started our first businesses around the same time. So I feel like not only walking side by side alongside each other, like through the journey at the beginning, but then also like my mom actually started working with me on this company, which has been like an incredible journey for us. But my parents having the successes that they've had and the failures that they've had. So it's really like that collective group, plus obviously a few others, because it really takes a village. But, you know, the people that have walked through it or that have done it before, really, those are like, that has been key.
Yeah. Now, in the steps to launch the business and launch FAIRE, what was easier than you thought it was going to be? You were like, maybe you built something up in your head and you were like, oh, this is going to be so difficult. And this particular part was easier. And then on the flip side, what was maybe harder than you thought it was going to be?
Easier, definitely finding sellers. I thought it would be a lot harder to convince people to join us, but it really wasn't like it. You know, first of all, we are operating in a space, like the ethical space. People are typically really nice and supportive of each other. So people were at Pawpaw Yoga. I still remember she was our first seller, and like just the joy she exuberated whenever I would talk to her. I was like, oh my God, like this is what I meant to be doing. And every seller after, it was just like a joy to work with all of them. And it was not nearly as difficult. They were eager to join, to like make this movement work together, and also to get more sales to their businesses.
Now, what about the more challenging part?
Definitely. So the technical stuff is always harder than you think it's going to be, always. From the very first site we threw up, like it was just kind of a disaster. And even we launched again this week, and it has not been launched our new website this week, and it has not gone well. And it's not even all within our developers' control. Like it's just random things can sometimes go wrong, which mess up like a ton of other things, or you just don't anticipate for certain issues, and you anticipate for other issues, which end up being fine. And like all of these surprises are showing up, and you're like, oh, didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Technology is one of those things where you're like, you love to hate it, but because sometimes it's really working in your favor, and other times you want to throw it out the window and just be like, can we just go back to the time of dial-up and recording songs off the radio onto cassette tapes? And it's a whole thing. So
I know. It's pretty ridiculous how reliant we are, but like frustrated we are when it's not absolutely perfect.
I know you're loving this conversation with Sydney, and wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor of the show, who is able to help make it possible, and that is CauseBox. As you know, CauseBox is one of my favorite ethical subscription boxes, and I have been a subscriber for over 2.5 years. How it works is each season a new box is filled with everything from accessories and home goods and jewelry to the best skincare and wellness products that are not only amazing, but they are doing the most good in the world. The products are not just beautiful, they are also useful. Now, the fall box, you guys, the fall box, it already sold out in record time. But have no fear if you did not get your hands on one, because they are releasing a fall welcome box that will also be limited edition. So you have to hurry on over to stillbeingmolly.com/causebox and use the coupon code MOLLY for $15 off to reserve that fall welcome box. Now, back to my conversation with Sydney. Now, I want to go back to a comment you made earlier in the show that I really loved. And you said, what does the term ethical mean to me? Because this is something that I've touched on in different interviews, and we've kind of talked about it, and I get asked about it a lot. Is like, well, what do you mean ethical? Or what do you mean purposeful? Or what do you mean conscious? Things like that. And sometimes I feel like these terms get thrown around, and they do mean something different to everybody. And I feel like everybody kind of has their thing. I am a people first person. Yes, I care about animals. Yes, I care about the environment. But to me, at the end of the day, if people are not being treated fairly, or if people are not being treated right, that's not okay with me. I mean, like I said, yes, I care about our planet. Yes, I care about animals. But my first priority is people. And so that's a higher priority for me than, say, buying vegan leather or, making sure that this company is using sustainable dyes, things like that. So it's like almost like everybody kind of has their rankings of things and what is ethical to them. Now that you are working in this space, and especially having moved from Austin, which is a very, like you said, I think we said this before we were recording, but just like it's a mindset there where everybody in Austin is kind of in that space, which, by the way, I have to laugh that I can totally tell you live in New York City because I can hear all the car horns.
Oh, it's hilarious. So funny. Some of the adjustments you have to make, you're like, oh, yeah, so loud all the time.
Oh, yeah. We're in New York now. I love it. Yeah. I love New York. I have spent a lot of time there. I have family there. And every time I'm there, I'm just like, New York, the smell of the subway.
The smell of the garbage.
All the garbage, all of the traffic, all the angry people. Like, nobody wants to look you in the eye. I'm like,
I know, it's pretty funny. I try to remember to smile at people all the time. So I'm like, I don't want to lose that. That's that's what I did in Austin.
Right.
And that's what I want to do here.
Yeah. But people in New York,
like, why is this work?
Do not understand about holding doors, like things like that. No, it is not a thing. Anyway. So being in this ethical space, what have you sort of found, how do people define ethical in different spaces? And do you think there is a good side, a positive side, a negative side to it? What are sort of your thoughts on this term being thrown around a lot?
So everybody seems to have different definitions. And we even just did some qualitative research where we used an application that questions consumers about their purchasing habits. And like one of the questions was, what does ethical mean to you? And we were trying to figure out, like, do they think ethical and fair trade are two different things or the same thing, or what does it mean? No one had the same definition, and nobody got it right. I mean, quote unquote, right. Based on like what quote unquote experts are saying, which of course I'm not even using what they're saying, and I work in the space, so it's fine. But it was just really interesting to see that we're not on the same page as far as ethical goes. And I think that is okay as long as people are able to trust the companies that are making the ethical claims. And that's where it gets a little difficult when people who are not really ethical end up throwing those terms around. They call it good washing now, so like greenwashing, but using phrases that don't really align with their actual business practices. It just makes it more confusing for consumers. And like, even when Trump says fair trade to reference like trade between countries, like fair trade is like a business practice, it really just confuses people. So, but I also think it probably makes people ask more questions. And that's one thing I try, like in conversations, I try not to define. I'll say like, we're an ethical marketplace, go down my little spiel, but I want people to ask what ethical means, or sometimes give me what they think ethical means, because I'm just really curious. Yeah. So as long as the space is growing, there's no negative aspect of even the companies. Like, it's confusing, but I think it also raises awareness, because we're really just lacking widespread awareness about some of these issues.
Oh, for sure. There is nothing more that drives me crazier than when like H&M came out with, they have that like recycling program or something in their stores. And I'm just like, oh, really? Because you are also advertising that your jeans are $9.99, and you cannot look me in the eye and tell me that your jeans that are $9.99 are ethically made. Like, you just, you can't.
That's, it goes back to what you're saying about people first. And like, you might be using recycled material, but if there's a 12-year-old girl working in your factory that's like probably being hit by her manager, or like, something's not right there, like working 15 hours a day, like she doesn't have a childhood. Like, I don't care how many times this denim has been recycled. I would like that 12-year-old girl to be in school and her parents to be paid better so that she doesn't have to work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it is such a complicated, messy system, and there's no quick fix, but companies can do better. And like, I am actually really impressed with companies like Target that are large corporations that are legitimately trying to do better. They're sitting there saying, hey, we are not perfect at this, but here is our commitment to do better. And so I don't know if you've seen this, but Target actually like recently released like a whole I think it's like a path to sustainability or something, that they're by 2020 or 2021, and forgive me if I'm completely misquoting this, but it's like, it's either by 2020 or 2021. It's on their website, so you can go, I'm not making this up, like you can go on like, I think you can just look at their path to sustainability or corporate social responsibility or something, but they have like a whole system in place where by this time they will have checked all of their supply chains, making sure they know exactly that the things in their supply chains are ethical. Like, I was in Target the other day, because I don't know if they're doing it to the Targets in New York City, but here they're renovating all the Targets to the new, like their new layout, which is supposed to be like fancier, nicer. I don't know, but it's crazy. But I went into our Target the other day that's in the middle of this renovation, and here I am in the middle of a large big box store, and yet I'm in the beauty section, and they have an entire, like a huge natural, clean, fair trade beauty section now. Like, amazing. And they're like small companies that I know some of the owners of these companies and I'm like, your stuff is in Target now? Like, that's amazing. I went in the kitchen supply section and they now have an entire section of like kitchen supplies, like, dish brushes and things like that are made in the USA, completely made of recycled materials. They're completely recyclable. And I'm like, go Target. Like, I see you.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect, but I think when you have a company like that is standing up and saying, hey, we're not perfect, but we're trying to do better and we're going to make improvements, that means more to me than H&M being like, look at us, we have a recycling program, when I'm like, right, I'm sure you do. You know what I mean? I realized that was a really long-winded, I get a little bit of a rant. But
I feel you for sure. But I think you're right. Like, it just shows that it's possible. And even there are so many studies out there that prove that like the price point at which we would have to, that we could double the wage of a lot of workers, like every worker along the supply chain. And I'm not going to quote it because I'm going to get it wrong, but the price, it's such a small sum of money that we would have to add like less than $1 to the price of like a $30 sweater in order to pay everybody along the supply chain, like from the person that plants the seed all the way up to the person like putting the tag on to double their wage or something like that. Like, and it's not just one study, like there's a plethora of studies out there. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's really expensive. And yes, if you add $1 to every or less to every sweatshirt and you're a massive company like Target, it's going to affect your bottom line. But also the amount of people that will shift, because there are also so many studies that consumers want ethical and they want it now. So the amount of people that might become more loyal customers or might buy more from you or whatever could also balance it out. And like, it really is not that much more expensive. And Target's showing that it's possible. So it's not about perfection. Like you said, it's just about like doing your best, being transparent, making commitments. And maybe one day you will be relatively close to perfect.
Yeah. And that's also something I tell to people as consumers. I think like consumers who are not into buying or purchasing ethically and they start to learn about this, or I have listeners of the show who are like, I'm really interested in this, but I'm overwhelmed. I think it's expensive. I think it's difficult, yada, yada, yada. And I'm almost like, take the Target approach. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to be perfect.
Start small. Yeah.
Start small. Like, start with one thing. Change the way you buy shoes. Change the way you buy denim. Change the way you recycle your clothing. Like, when you get rid of something, don't just throw it in the trash. Like, how can you be better about how you consume in general? Like, buy organic cotton, like whatever's your thing, like just start small and go from there. It doesn't have to be this complete transformation overnight. And I think that is something that sometimes I think it's pretty apparent that I'm a pretty positive person. I try to take things, I try to look at the good in everything, but I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm human. There are some times that I get a little irked at the ethical community, because sometimes I feel like the ethical community can seem very elitist and can take on an attitude of like, well, if you say you're in the ethical community and you still shop at Target, then I don't know that we can be friends. And I just want to be like, get over yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the way to bring people in is to be compassionate and like help them understand. And and if they're perfect in that area, they're probably imperfect in another area. Right. And like, we're all on the same team as long as we're curious and trying. So we need to like support each other.
Yes, we're on the same team. I like that, Sydney. Right. We are on the same team.
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, I love having that conversation because I think it is an important one to have. And I think that it's good to be thinking about that as businesses grow, as your business grows, as my business grows. And as the ethical community grows, that conversation can evolve. Like, I don't think the definition of ethical is written in stone. Nope. And so, ethics issues that we have today might be different 20 years from now. And so the definition, I think, is going to be continuing to evolve and change. So I appreciate you kind of giving me your insight and your input in that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that if people can start small, it's funny to see how the people around me, as I've gotten more interested in this, I've learned so much more that I'm making so many better choices than I was before when I didn't know nearly as much. And watching people around me, like it really just starts with one small step. And like before you know it, you are making a lot of ethical purchases.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's cool to watch the transformation. And like you said, the definition's always shifting. What it means to you might be different as long as you're taking like little steps here and there.
Yeah.
You know,
no, I completely
better than
agree.
nothing.
I completely agree. Well, what is on the horizon for FAIRE, and what big things do you guys have going on? What would you like to share with the people?
So right now we have our shop, and like you said, it's complicated, it's difficult. What we want to do with the shop is make it really simple. And so what we want to expand into all categories. Like if you want ethical toothpaste, ethical paper towels, and a whole new wardrobe, like we want you to be able to find all of that stuff really, really easily. Mm-hmm. So that's like the number one thing. It's just trying to expand what we're offering on our website and expand our reach so that more people know that it can be really easy to order online. And then second, we also have FAIRE.world because we realized that people are struggling to get wrap their heads around some of these issues. And hey, me too, I get it. So FAIRE.world is all just about education. Like we're just trying to answer some questions. So if anybody has any questions, like we'd be happy to look into it and like post an article. And one of the things I'm most excited about that we're working on now is getting our verification process. So if people are fair trade certified or certified by one of the 10 companies that we accept, certifying parties that we accept automatically, then they just go straight onto a website, super easy. But if they are not certified, then we go through and verify them just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to the best of our abilities. And I'm really excited to post our process online and like our minimums online so that we can be more transparent. So that's some stuff that's like right around the corner. And then we have so many things that we want to do in the future. And like, I guess because of the marketplace model, it makes it really easy to start offering services to our sellers. So I'm really looking forward to that. We want to do FAIRE tours so we can take people to these places. Like you're talking about going to Kenya, we're talking about traveling, like really connecting to some of these cultures that are producing these products. So we want to do that next year, and where we're going to go and what we're going to do, I'm not sure, but I'm really excited about, traveling with a small group of people and like really getting connected to some of these issues on the ground. And then so much more after that. I could go on, but those are some things that are coming up that I'm really excited about.
That is awesome. Well, I'm really excited for you. And for the listeners, I will have all of Sydney's information as well as how you can shop with FAIRE in the show notes. And it's FAIRE.
Yes.
.shop.
FAIRE.shop.
In case you were wondering, like don't start Googling FAIRE as in the word without the E, and then you'll you'll get too many results. So anyway, all right. So now is the time of the show when we transition a little bit to get to know you on a more personal level and ask some fun questions. This is also the time of the show when my husband inserts a movie quote or television quote or sound effect to transition us to the get to know you round. So Sydney, are you ready?
I am ready.
Saw a lady recently crying in the middle of the aisle at Target, just in the middle of ugly crying, hard crying, okay? And I was like, oh no, I should do something. I go right up to her and I'm like, excuse me, ma'am, I think you mean to be in Walmart right now? How about don't cry in Target, Karen, okay? I'm not paying an extra 15 cents for macaroni and cheese to see you cry. Target is for champions, okay?
So my first question is, what is your go-to song at a karaoke night?
That would probably have to be, oh God, this is not that easy. I don't say I'm a horrible singer.
Well, see, it's karaoke though, so it doesn't matter. Like,
no, it doesn't matter. Probably something old. I don't know lyrics to any recent song, so probably something from like the 90s, like Britney Spears or something like that.
Yes. Britney Spears karaoke all the way.
Why not?
A little hit me baby one more time.
Right? Still know the lyrics to that, so it's really questionable.
Pre 2007 Britney.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. My friend has a shirt that says, I feel like 2007 Britney, and it just cracks me up every time she wears it. But then the other day she was like writing this motivational quote on Instagram, or motivational thing on Instagram. She's like, don't feel like 2007 Britney. Feel like 2014 Britney when she got that stage in Vegas. Like, I was like,
you're like, oh, someone's getting a new t-shirt.
That's true. I like it. Okay. Next question is, since you have visited so many countries, what is the strangest thing you have ever eaten?
I don't eat meat. So I'd have to say probably bugs. Like I've eaten crickets and like other weird things like that.
Have you ever been to Thailand?
Yes.
So I always see like my friends who have been to Thailand in the marketplace where they just have like weird stuff there. I'm just like, hard pass for me.
Yeah. No, like the snakes on a stick. I'm like, I can't. I draw the line. Tarantulas on a stick. No, thank you.
Hard pass. Hard. That is, I'm riding the Nope train to Nopeville.
I'm on that one too.
Yeah. No. Okay. So next question is, what is your guilty pleasure?
Ooh, definitely cheese and queso.
Yes.
Tex-Mex. So yeah.
All of the queso.
All of the queso.
All of the queso. I believe truly in my heart of hearts that nothing bad can happen around a bowl of chips and queso or chips and guac.
Oh, no, it's impossible. Yeah. Everything good comes from that.
Like,
it doesn't matter.
I believe that somebody should have gone. I mean, this is not me getting political. This is just me saying something, just facts, is that somebody should have gone into that meeting with Trump and Kim Jong-un and just brought some chips and guac, and like peace would be made.
Peace would be made all over the world with queso. That's all you need. A little bit of travel and a little bit of queso.
A little bit of queso, and it'd be good. Okay, and then the last question is, for what are you most grateful for today?
I am the most grateful for the things I don't know. Like just the things to come that I don't know about. And that's what I've been every morning in my meditation, just thinking about, like, surprises. Just surprise me. It could be good, it could be bad, but I know it will always work out. And so just to be curious, alive, and see what comes.
I love that. That's deep. That's deep, Sydney.
It's not that easy to like really feel grateful for it, but I've been trying. So
I love it. Well, Sydney, this has been just such a pleasure, and I am so appreciative for your time on the show. And thank you so much for all that you're doing with FAIRE.
Well, thank you. This was really fun. My most fun podcast so far. I love it.
Yay. Good. I like to try to make sure that you guys have a lot of fun when you come on my show. So
yes, no, it was very, very enjoyable. So
awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Sydney has such a unique and interesting perspective on the ethical marketplace. I loved hearing everything she and FAIRE are doing to connect artisans with conscious consumers. I will have all of her information in the show notes as usual. And another huge thank you to this week's podcast sponsor, CauseBox. Don't forget to get your hands on that fall welcome box by going to stillbeingmolly.com/CauseBox and use the coupon code MOLLY for $15 off. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you're a first-time listener of the show, welcome. Be sure to visit the archives for past shows featuring amazing entrepreneurs and business owners who are quite literally changing the world with what they do for a living. And if you are a regular listener of the show, thank you so much for your support and for tuning in and week out. Be sure to head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Radio Public, Overcast, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you are subscribed to the show. Clicking that subscribe button helps to make sure that you never, ever, ever miss a new episode of the show. And if you have a moment, would you mind heading on over to iTunes and leaving a review of the show? Leaving a review of the show just really helps me to know what you're liking and how the show is personally impacting you. And if you share the show on social media, be sure to use the hashtag Business with Purpose Podcast or tag me at StillBeingMolly on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. This show is edited by my amazing and wonderful husband and executive producer, John Stillman, and the music is by Mark Killian of Third Wheel Media. Thank you so much for listening, and go do something good with purpose on purpose.